Hi everyone, my name is Mrs. Crawford. Today we're working on the mid-segment lesson. So this is Unit 1.2, Day 6, lesson on mid-segment. We taught it in class on Friday, September 29th. So mid-segment is kind of a little bit different than the stuff we've worked on. It looks a little different than the transversals and things we've dealt with. Kind of looks like this picture. To me, it reminds me of if you've got like an attic in your house and you see like the rafters up in the ceiling area, it kind of reminds me of that. So like this would be almost the roof sort of angle, and then they've got these kind of bars of wood going across. That's what it makes me think of. But there's a couple properties with mid-segment that we wanted to talk about a bit. And that is that the mid-segment, well, first of all, let's figure out which one the mid-segment is. Mid means middle, and segment is just a line, basically. So it's the middle segment of a triangle. So actually it's this guy right here, YZ. That's the mid segment of this triangle. Now there's a couple properties that we want to talk about real briefly. One is that the mid segment is parallel to the opposite side. Now when I say opposite side, I mean opposite like this. So this is a side that's opposite, and you can tell because it is the one that's parallel. Okay, it kind of looks like two rungs of a ladder almost. So those are parallel, and then there's also an important property where the mid-segment is half the length of the opposite side. So in other words, if this was 20, that means the mid-segment is half that length, so it would have to be 10. And I get that by doing 20 divided by 2, or if I knew what the mid-segment was, so let's say instead that, let's say the mid-segment is 6, okay? Well, if 6 is half of this length, how do I get to the long length? Well, I do the opposite, I double it, and I get 12, okay? So that's how you can tell which one the mid-segment is and what the opposite side is. And we're actually going to write down a little formula to help with that. 2 times the mid-segment, whatever the mid-segment is, if you double it, you should get the opposite side. So that's kind of your template for this one. We've kind of been giving a lot of fill-in-the-blank template sort of things for the last few days of our lessons. So that's the one we need for today. So please make sure to write that down as well. So let's move on to the first one. This has got a lot of stuff going on. It says that AB, BC, and AC are all mid-segments. So let's start with AB. If AB is the mid-segment here, what side of the triangle is the side that's opposite from it? Which one's parallel to that AB length? Well, it's the one right across from it. It's G to J. And you can even see that those two red lines are obviously parallel. They would never touch. They kind of look like the rungs on a ladder. They're perfectly distanced from each other. One of the other ones is BC. Okay, and you can even rotate your picture if that helps. But what's the side that's opposite of BC? Which one's parallel to that one? Well, that would be H to G. Oops, got a little bit off with my coloring there. And then the last one we've got is AC. So what side is opposite from AC? What's the one that's parallel to it? HJ. So those are all the mid segments, and then the sides that match along with them. Excuse me. So it tells us that AB is equal to 6, and we're trying to find G to J. Now GJ actually matches with that mid segment. So if the mid-segment is half the length of GJ, well, what do I do with 6 to get to GJ? Remember the formula we talked about? You do 2 times the mid-segment, which means the full opposite side is 12. Now we've got an angle here. I'm not really going to delve into that quite yet, but just realize that those parallel lines we've been dealing with actually do relate to this problem as well. Because the mid-segment is parallel to its opposite side, we've got those parallel lines coming in, and we can use some of the other sides as like a transversal. so we can get those alternate interior corresponding type angles like we dealt with earlier. But I'm going to kind of hold off on that today and focus on just the side lengths. All right, so example number 2 is just numeric stuff again, but they give you a little bit more information to work with. So first of all, let's make sure we know which one the mid segment is. Remember, mid means middle, so in the middle of the triangle we've got CB. That's our mid segment. And they want us to find the length of QS, which happens to be the side that's opposite from the mid segment. It's that long parallel side. And you can see with the red lines, even though I drew it really poorly, that they are parallel and that it is opposite from that. Now, that means that, do we actually need this 12 at all? Does that have anything to do with the mid segment or the opposite side? No. It's extraneous or extra information. Don't feel like because there's a number in the problem you have to use it. That's not always the case. So remember our formula, right? 2 times the mid segment always equals the opposite side. So if the mid segment here is 8, what does my opposite side have to be? 16. And some of you might have been able to figure that out pretty quickly in your heads. It's some pretty simple multiplication. But now we're going to move on to stuff with a little bit more algebra. And I really want you guys to start with figuring out where your mid segment is. Okay, so in this picture, mid segment is the middle of the triangle, right there, TS. That's our mid segment, the middle of the triangle. Okay, so I'm actually going to write out my formula again. 2 times the mid segment, I'm just abbreviating mid segment with MID, is equal to its opposite side. So if I double the mid segment, it should equal what the opposite side is. Well, which one's my opposite side in this picture? HF. So there's my opposite side. So now I got to plug it in. Instead of mid-segment, I'm going to put in the value that it gives for that, 2x minus 9. Instead of the opposite side, I'm going to plug in what that value is, which is negative 8 plus 3x. Now that part I feel like is kind of the easy part. Now you've got a little bit more algebra to take care of. If there's a number in front, remember back to middle school when you learned all this algebra stuff, what is this called? Those little arches? That's referring to distributing. I apologize for my coughing randomly. I had a little bit of a mini cold. So 2 times 2x becomes 4x. 2 times negative 9 becomes negative 18. Notice on this right-hand side, there's no doubling. There's no anything happening to it. All I have to do is double the mid-segment, and it should be now equal to the opposite side. So I'm just going to bring down the negative 8 plus 3x. Now I got to start moving some stuff around. I want to get all the numbers on the right-hand side, so I'm going to move 18 over here. And we'll just drop the 4x down. That's the same. This is now gone. And negative 8 plus 18 is going to become 10. And then 3x is over there. Now I got to move my variables together. So I'm going to move the 3x over by subtracting. It's going to get rid of that there. And 4 minus 3 becomes 1x. That's equal to 10. And if you want to do this last step, you can. But some of you also realize that 1x is the same as x, so you could have just dropped to this answer. X equals 10. Okay. The biggest thing is getting this part set up. If you can get that first part set up, the rest of it is truly just your algebra skills, which for some people may be a little tricky. That might be a refresher, and that's okay. We really want to make sure you get this part, though, since that's the new Math 2 curriculum that we're teaching you. Okay, so not that one. This is the last example on your notes page. I know it says 5. It's really example 4 because I skipped one from the notes. So I'd actually like you to pause right here and see if you can at least come up with the equation on your own. Remember, you're doing 2 times the midsegment equals the opposite side. So please at least write down the equation. If you want to go ahead and solve it, go for it. But I'd like you to at least pause and come up with that equation on your own before you watch the remainder where I go through it. All right. Hopefully you paused. Hopefully you went through and tried it on your own. That's going to give you a good idea of how well you know it. Again, remember to find your midsegment first. The middle of the triangle, right here, RS is our midsegment. The side that's opposite from it, that's parallel, is going to be WY. Okay, so we're going to use those 2 lengths. Notice, is x minus 1 in this problem at all? Do we need it? No. So I'm actually going to cross it off because I don't want to be distracted by that. That's kind of extra information. Okay, so instead of mid for midsegment, I'm going to replace that with what it tells me that is, which is x minus 4. The opposite side is x plus 4. So I'm going to replace that as well. So hopefully this is how you started your problem. If you went further and you did it incorrectly, that's okay. Just try and make sure you write my work down as well. But you should have started like this and then begun your algebra by distributing. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Notice the right-hand side is totally the same as when you started. Nothing is changing from that first step. And sorry if you hear background noise. My cat is deciding to be a little mischievous and get into everything. So you might hear her causing a little bit of a ruckus. So let's finish off this problem. So let's start by getting all of the numbers on the right-hand side. Get rid of that negative 8. And if you start with the variables, that's okay. I just prefer to start with the numbers. We have x plus 12. Now I got to get the x's together. Get rid of that. 2x minus x is x just by itself, or 1x. So my answer for right now is x equals 12. Now check back at your directions. It actually asks you to find the length of RS. Now RS is not 12, that's what x equals, but what do I do with 12? Well, look at RS. It says RS is x minus 4. Well, I just figured out x is 12, so let's plug that in. Instead of x, let's put 12. Well, what's 12 minus 4? That's equal to 8. So my final answer is that RS is equal to 8. That's the length of that actual piece of the triangle. Okay. Hopefully that gives you guys a really good start for your notes. If you need help, please email us or talk to us in class. The back side of this, your assignment was numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5 if you're in Mrs. Crawford and Mr. Colt's class. If you're in a different class, I don't know what your homework was, but that was our assignment. So please work on that and get that checked by us.